Good evening, familia. This is Josue Collazo, and you're watching and listening to the simulcast of the Found in Translation podcast and Bomba Live, the virtual Puerto Rican celebration, because Puerto Rico is, we don't stop celebrating. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Josue Collazo, and we'll have many of our very special friends and guests and co-hosts and contributors on in a second. I want to thank you for watching this live show, whether you're watching on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, as a vodcast on YouTube, as a podcast, anywhere you can download the Found in Translation podcast, or as a radio program at WPPMOP 106.5 FM in the city of Philadelphia. On this very special simulcast later on in the show, we're going to have one of our regular hosts, Christina Vega, and a very special guest, Liza Bonet Morales. Of course, you know XOXO Liza from social media, who's going to talk about how we can continue to organize around issues related to social justice, and a very special update on the upcoming Hispanicize Conference, which is a major event on the calendar for Latinos in social media. But first, we have another very special guest we want to introduce. But let's start with my co-host, my fearless co-host, riding shotgun with me as always, Zulay Picarelli. Good evening, Zulay.
Hello, Ray. I've missed you. My hands are still sweating from Bomba Live.
Yes, no, Bomba Live was a whole lot of fun. And as you can see, the Bomba Live continues in some iteration. We're trying to figure out, is this going to become two shows? Does it become Bomba Live? But either way, we're going to keep the party going, and you're a big part of that. And I know that this sort of grouping of guests is right up your alley because it really falls in the intersection of activism, the arts, literature, suspense, and social media.
Indeed, whether it's curling up on the couch for a Netflix series or a good book, many of us cannot get enough of crime thrillers. And tonight on the Found in Translation Bomba Live podcast, we have the author of the hottest new crime novel, The Golden Prison. Welcome, Paul Sangillo, to the show. Hi, Paul.
Hi there.
So good to have you on.
Paul Sangillo.
So much.
I'll tell you what, in the spirit of diversity, how many podcasts can say on the same show with three panelists, they have two Dominicans and three Latinos with Italian last names?
True, that is so true.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, this is something, Paul. If we were a law firm, obviously you would be the lead partner. So it would be Sangillo, Collazo. You got it with Picarelli to just give it that pump. So Sangillo, Collazo, and Picarelli. Some good stuff here. But yeah. Paul, for our New York area friends, and of course our Columbia network, is a very, highly decorated lawyer and very well known in the legal circles in the tri-state area. But now, Paul, you have transitioned, and we want to hear more about this incredible new crime novel that you've written. You're now an author. So before Zulay gets into the nitty-gritty of this new book you have, The Golden Prison, because she had some questions for you about this incredible opus that you've written, but just share with us a little bit about the journey of going from a highly successful, still to this day, a very highly successful lawyer in the cutthroat world of New York legal world, to now a very successful new author.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you both, Ray and Zulay, for having me on this show. I'm so proud of you. This is a really a great platform. So happy to be on. With respect to the book, it's pretty amazing because I had started this all the way back in law school, just started it. And it wasn't until back in 2005 that I actually had a completed manuscript. And this is just something, I think it really translates to, the struggle, not only as an author, but also as a Latino artist, because I had tried to get this published years and years ago. I can't even tell you how many times it was rejected by different publishing houses. And, the whole moral of this tale is, don't give up the fight. If you're after something, if you want to, accomplish your dream or your goals, persevere. So, with that said, this manuscript was done in 2005, and it really wasn't until maybe 2.5 years ago that I approached this gentleman who I had known years and years ago. And I said, I had approached him with another project, which he had rejected. He was a former media executive and started his own his own small publishing house. And he said, sure, why don't you send this over to me? I'd love to take a look at it. And he read it. He got back to me right away, which, blew me away because so many other times it was just, rejected outright. And he said he loved it. He said, but it needs some editing, some heavy editing. So it went through a very lengthy editing process. I have an amazing editor. She's spectacular. When she sees this, I send my best out to her for just doing a great job. And we launched recently, and in the midst of the pandemic, it's gotten great reviews. I'm very proud of the reception it's received, and I'm so happy to be on this program today to talk to you both about this.
Paul, could you maybe perhaps take us all the way back to when you were crafting and developing
Sure.
characters? Like, what does that process look like for an author?
Yeah, that's an amazing thing. I early in my career and during law school, you really encounter so many different characters. Okay. Ray and I go way back, all the way back to Columbia College. And Columbia College, you work hard, but you have a lot of fun. I went straight into law school right after college, and the fun stopped right there. And it was a very interesting thing because, again, back to my Latino roots, having been raised by my mom, who was Dominican in a Latino household, even though as I mentioned to you earlier, my father's Italian, but I was raised by my mom. And so I always remember at Columbia College, there was always a lot of warmth and camaraderie amongst the students. And then when you get to the law school, it becomes a hyper competitive atmosphere. At least it was back then. Perhaps it's changing a little bit. And then I remember thinking, wow, I want to write about this because, in many respects, the main character has certain parallels with me. And so I remember reflecting upon this jolt from having done well at Columbia College and then wanting to go on to bigger things with the law school, and realizing that, wow, what have I gotten myself into, and how much different these people are that I'm studying with than the people who I was going to school with just a year prior. And then also the whole regimen, the workload, the rigors involved with the study of law. And I wanted to write about that. So trying to fit that in was not an easy thing. I went to school with a great study partner. He and I had a wonderful relationship during my early law school years, and we would talk about some of the different characters that we went to school with. Some were international students. Some were, like myself, who came from small towns in New Jersey. Some who came from the West Coast. And really just a lot of different colorful characters that I wanted to build into this. And not only did I want to talk about different characters, but I wanted to talk about the experience and then integrate the mystery part of it. And what's different about this book is it talks about, for the most part, transactional law. An attorney who goes through law school, it reflects what it is he has to go through, his struggles in order to become a lawyer, and then going to one of the big firms in Manhattan, and then what he encounters there, which makes everything that came prior, makes that look easy. Compared to now what he has to do.
And you're listening to Paul Sangello, again, a very well-respected gentleman in the legal field in the tri-state area, now an author. Really excited, very proud of him for his journey. to, I don't know where you find the time, brother, but it's an incredible journey. We want to hear more about this book, but you've given us a good primer because you actually brought a trailer with you, a video clip that gives us sort of a summation of what to expect, and then Zelaya will come back to ask you some questions, kind of deep dive. We know there's a lot of people watching and listening to this here on the simulcast, the Found in Translation of Bomba Live, that love crime thrillers and are intrigued by just by the legal system in general. Want to shout out Red Sky Entertainment, who is your publisher. Critics are saying this is a cleverly drafted legal thriller that combines intrigue, humor, and romance. So let's watch the trailer. Then Zelaya will come back and ask a question of our author and very special guest and a great friend to the show, Paul Sangillo, the author of the Golden Prison book.
Wow, Paul, that was amazing.
Thank you.
I have to ask, at what point did you realize that this could be much greater, something bigger than outside the book?
Oh, wow. I started getting very, very good reviews, and the publisher, immediately, they always knew that they liked the work product. And like I said, the editor did an amazing job rearranging things, kind of changing the flow a little bit, and improved the work. From the start, I think they said that they had certain aspirations for it, but I tend to try not to get too excited until things actually materialize. So, but I think early on we realized that the most important thing is the quality of the writing, and like I said, it's gotten some favorable reviews. I think folks think it's a fun read. It gives you a little flavor of what it's like to go to law school, which I wanted in there. Also, what it's like to start off at a big firm, and then it gets into it integrates some of those other aspects of a typical legal thriller: the mystery surrounding the murder, love scenes. And there's clubs in there. There's New York nightlife. There are drug deals. There are all sorts of things that make it very interesting. Car chases. So I think there's a little bit of everything in there to satisfy folks who are into legal thrillers.
I read that there is talks of a sequel to The Golden Prison.
A sequel, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What themes do you feel that you'd like to explore next?
Wow. I have to be honest with you. I have to think this through.
Yeah.
Because if I get started on the sequel, and I haven't yet, but there's definitely the intent to do so. I want to put forth something that's quality, that's entertaining, fun, and something that you learn a little something. With that said, and then I want to build on these characters, because I've got some great characters here. So the question becomes, he ends up, and I'm not giving anything away, but the main character ends up in Montana, And the question is something going to happen back in New York that brings him back to New York? Is there going to be something that happens in LA? Is he going to marry an FBI agent? Is there going to be some kind of scandal in Montana? Will he end up having to, working with Native Americans on a reservation that's being threatened? I don't know. All these thoughts have popped in my head. I don't know where it's going to lead, but I'm excited about it.
That's really great. Ray, I don't know if we have time for one last question.
Absolutely. You can go right ahead.
I'm so sorry now, I'd like to ask a question about your process as an author.
Sure.
Because I picture, right, that you probably carry a notebook around, and when inspiration or ideas strike, so that you can write them down. I have no idea.
At all times.
But it's so awesome to, have someone to discuss this with. What is it like for you?
For me, it's funny because, all these thoughts pop into my head all the time. And then I'm constantly, like you just said, scribbling notes. And it's fine for me. It's aggravating for my wife because I'll get up from the dinner table and a thought popped into my head and I want to make sure I get it down. But that's very true. I mean, because sometimes if you have something interesting, some of the things I just mentioned before a few moments ago about where we're going to take the character next, if you have a really interesting thought and then you forget to write it down, you can spend, an entire, portion of your day trying to figure out what was that great idea, and then I missed that, and then that's really aggravating. So, but in terms of process, I will take down lots and lots of notes of different ideas. Once I think I have a consensus of a lot of good ideas around what I want to do with the character, then I start writing. And then I see where that takes me. And then my editor told me, she said, listen, in every scene, you need to advance either the plot or the characters. Okay. And that's sometimes difficult for me because, sometimes I'm being trained as a lawyer, you can end up going off in certain tangents. And sometimes I like to put lots and lots of detail so that people get a real idea of what it's like to be studying for the bar exam. How did the character study for the bar exam? He studied standing up because he didn't want to fall asleep, okay, with a pot of coffee next to him. And those types of details. But sometimes, I've been told, this might be a little boring. You need to either advance the plot or the character at all times. So it's kind of a tension between the two. And I try and incorporate both. I'm trying to incorporate both. I want to be true to everything I want to get on the paper, but at the same time, I want to keep the action flowing to keep people interested and turning the pages.
Well,
and you're watching my co-host Eli Piccarelli and Paul Sangillo talk about Paul's newest book, The Golden Prison. You can find anywhere you can download on any device or tablet. My wife's reading it on her Kindle as we speak, and Amazon, and a physical copy as well. We encourage people to purchase. In a moment, you're going to hear from Bomba Live family and Found Translation Christina Vega and the legendary social media queen, La Reina XOXO Liza, will be joining us. We're so proud to have her on the show. But Paul, my final question to your brother is,
yes, sir.
I know one of the reasons you wanted to come on here specifically this week with everything going on in the world, you wanted to give a special shout out and a few words of advice to aspiring Latino authors. There's so many, we really are in a golden age, particularly with this new generation of Latina authors in literature, spoken word, and a lot of different genres. But, you're really blazing a trail into one that we have such an interest in. And I'm sure there's a lot of other aspiring crime writers that are having a tough time getting into the business. So any a brief thoughts you have for those that are looking and following your footsteps?
Thank you so much. First, I just want to add, with respect to your platform and what you're doing, you guys are trailblazers as well. I'm grateful to be here on this show. This has been a great experience, and I think you guys are doing an amazing job. With that said, I want to close this, with the same premise that we opened with, which is perseverance. Sometimes with Latinos, we know we have these mountains to climb that almost seem insurmountable, but press forward. And like I said earlier, if you have a goal and you want to achieve it, my goal, getting this published, it took 15 years. It took 15 years and literally 100 rejections before I found one person who would invest the time and the effort to help make this a reality. And so with that said, Latinos know, they know what the struggle is like, and so be it. Remain persistent, follow your dreams, and you can achieve any goal you set your mind to, whether it be an author, whether it be another area of entertainment, whether it be the law, whether it be trying to pursue your civil rights, all of the above. We always have to keep that in mind. It's terribly important, especially in this day and age.
Before we ask Paul to, again, remind people they can purchase the Golden Prison and keep up with him on social media, Zulay, I know you've been inspired by this segment. You are very intrigued by Paul's journey. And of course, I know you're looking forward to reading the book. So just any final thoughts you have for Paul?
I was just wanting to say that I'm looking forward to see what happens next for the Golden Prison, sequel, Netflix series, whatever that may be. We're really excited for you.
I can play, some guy working as a bar back in a scene at a club, and Netflix, I don't mind. There's no small roles, just small actors. You know what I'm saying? Let me tell you, Paul is. I gotta tell a story before you go, Paul. You're one of the smooth, if not the smoothest brother I know. You're up there. July, I'm just gonna leave the crowd with this. When I asked my man, hey, much respect to your wonderful wife, Alexandra, is a great friend as well. So how did you meet your wonderful wife? When the story starts with, well, I was in Rio de Janeiro for New Year's, then you're smooth. You know what I'm saying? So, but Paul, again, great friend, great mentor, very gracious with your, with your time and always supporting all of my whole family. And, you're a big part of the family, brother. So we're going to continue to support the Golden Prison. Remind people they can follow you on social media and follow what's going on with your new book.
Absolutely. The book is on Amazon. You just type in Paul Sangillo or the Golden Prison. It will immediately pop up. You can get it in downloadable e-version, or you can get it in paperback. And like I said, it's a fun read. That's the best way to get the book. And this has been an honor and a pleasure. I thank you both. This has been just great. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Paul Sangillo, great friend. Continue to support another emerging Latino author. We're really excited to see this part of your journey, brother, and we support you 100%. Before we welcome Liza and Christina back on the show, we're not going to play a video that's part of a series from our friends at Trill Multicultural. Trill Multicultural and their founder, Nicole Valadez, has developed a web series, The Activist Bootcamp, that provides us valuable tools to stand with Sean Monterrosa and other victims of murder by the police. After this clip, then we'll introduce our other great guests. Thank you, Paul.
There are countless examples of violent white perpetrators being taken into police custody without even a scratch. The difference between them and people like George Floyd and Sean Monterrosa was the color of their skin. Today I want to talk to you about Sean Monterrosa, a 22-year-old Latino who was murdered by Vallejo PD when he was kneeling on the ground with his hands up in the air. The officer responsible for Sean's murder fired 5 shots from behind his windshield. He never even stepped out of the car. Sean was a beloved son, brother, and community leader. He fought for social justice until the very end. In fact, the day that he was murdered, he had been out protesting the murder of George Floyd, and the last text he was ever able to send was a message to his sister with a petition for George Floyd. Vallejo PD is one of the most notoriously dangerous and violent in California. Since 2010, they've killed 19 people, one of the highest rates in the state. If you read about this case, you may see that the officer alleged he feared for his safety when he mistook a hammer in Sean's pocket for a gun. I urge you not to be distracted by this narrative.
Your experience of 27 years was this excessive force?
Like I said, the district attorney is going to look at this, and our internal affairs unit is going to look at it.
And you could hear there, Chief Williams did not want to answer that question.
There are countless examples of violent white perpetrators being taken into police custody without even a scratch. The difference between them and people like George Floyd and Sean Monterrosa was the color of their skin. Remember, public pressure leads to action. So here are your action steps for today. Step 1. Go to standwithsean.com. You'll want to sign the petition there. It's a super petition, which is going to email all of the local officials who are responsible for Sean's case. Step 2. You're going to want to call 707-209-7176. This hotline is going to robocall you through all the local officials who have any influence over Sean's case. There's a script in this post so that you'll know exactly what to say when you call this number. Essentially, we're asking for this. We want the State Attorney General, Xavier Becerra, the Solano County District Attorney, Krishna A. Abrams, and the Vallejo PD to fire and bring charges against the officer responsible for Sean's murder.
At the tone. When finished, you may hang up or press pound for additional options.
Hi, my name is Nicole Valadez, and I'm calling on behalf of Sean Monterrosa. I urge you to do the right thing and seek justice for Sean. We demand that the State Attorney General, the District Attorney, and the Vallejo PD take immediate action to fire, arrest, and charge Officer Jarrett Ton for the murder of Sean Monterrosa. Public pressure will not let up until we see action. Thank you.
You're doing a great job. Thank you so much. Stay on the line and talk to as many people as you can.
These resources were provided by the Grassroots Law Project, and they make it so simple and easy for you to make a maximum impact with minimal time commitment. We'll be back with another episode of the Activist Bootcamp. Until next time, let's get to work for Sean.
Thank you so much, our friends at Trill Multicultural, Nicole, and our great friend Rolando Rodriguez from Houston, Texas, that brought us this series that we're working on. We support I Stand With Sean 1,000%. We're going to get into how Latinos get engaged in these policing issues in a moment with our other very special guest, but the Bomba Live talent director and Found Translation sister, Christina Vegas, again with us. Christina, I know you enjoyed that first segment with Paul.
I did. That was awesome.
Great project he's got going on. What's going on, Christina?
Yeah, that's amazing. Hi, guys. Thank you for having me again. That was
one of my big bros. Smooth cat.
Yeah, he is pretty smooth. I was like, okay.
Yeah, he's got a lot happening there. Well,
pretty cool.
And he can dance salsa too. You know, when you're Dominican Italian, you gotta be smooth. You know what I'm saying? So
for me, that's always a
settled
for me.
But anyway. No question. Well, like I said, he's gonna end up acting in this Netflix series. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Christina, thank you. First of all, you're doing double duty today because Love Shouldn't Hurt, your campaign to support Latina survivors of domestic violence. You did a show earlier, just 7:00. So why don't you just really quickly talk to us about the subject matter, and then Zalai will introduce our very special guest.
We were just kind of just looking for resources and just giving more information out for folks who have dealt with domestic violence during the COVID pandemic. Because even though it seems to everyone else that it's over, it's really not over. We're still going through this pandemic, and there are folks who are home, unfortunately, with their abusers. So we were just kind of highlighting just different resources within a community. We had Adonis Vanegas, who is from Concilio. He's their executive director. He came on to talk about a lot of different things within their organization, but also highlighted their victim services program that they have, that they work with the 25th Police District within Philadelphia to kind of help victims who've gone through any sort of violence, domestic violence being one of them, and kind of just like financial help that they can give and different things, and just shouting out all of the community workers like Women in Transition and Women Against Abuse and the National Domestic Violence Hotline. So just kind of giving more information for folks. I think it was really awesome. The show went really well. We had suggestions for just work that we can continue to do, different collaboratives to work with just even nurses and kind of finding red flags with domestic violence. So it was a great show. I think it was super informative. I think it's something that we need to continue to do, kind of just keeping the word out there and kind of just bringing a familiar face out there so that people can continue to remember that domestic violence is prevalent, and especially even more so since the numbers have risen about 30% during this COVID pandemic.
Well, that's something that you have, Christina, you've done a great job keeping in front of all of our minds. And we've reminded people frequently that this, social distancing, social isolation has put many people, many women, too many people in our community, especially the Latinos, our community, at risk because they're, for lack of a better term, they're stuck. With their abuser. So Zulay, it was really important for us with the timing coming up for another great virtual Latino celebration that really is at the nexus of Latino star power and the activism taking place in our streets related to Black Lives Matter, Brown Lives Matter, as we shared these issues going on, also impacting the Latino community with people like Sean and others. We couldn't think of a better guest to have on this week to discuss these issues.
That's right. And the Found in Translation Bomba Live family is proud to have actor, activist, TV host, and founder of Classy Chingonas. I love that name.
I do too.
And hashtag Power Latinas. We want to welcome Liza Monet Morales, aka XOXO Liza.
X is in the house. What's going on?
How are you? Welcome.
I am so well. Thank you all for having me. I was like, where's the pizza back here? I was having such a great time backstage. I was like, you get it, Christina, come through. And I just want to say congratulations. I'm so proud of you all for taking the initiative to launch and to hold space. As you all know, I'm actually wearing my Altísimo Live t-shirt, which you probably can see there. So that was really exciting. As you know, we made history with that live stream. It was the first out of quarantine, and it was named the best concert coming out of quarantine, which I thought was a super great honor. We had 3.5 weeks to put that bad boy together and raise money for the unsung heroes of the United States and Puerto Rico, which are our farm workers. So I was so happy to hear when you guys did Bomba Live to then continue the celebration on the island, and just love what you all are doing here. So thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here with us.
I know my team. Jump in there, Zulay.
I wanted to quickly ask, how is the Latino Hollywood community you work with getting engaged in Black Lives Matter and now Brown Lives Matter?
Yeah, so thank you so much for asking that. It's really interesting. I've been in this business since I'm a kid, and to your point, I'm an actor, I'm a TV host, and at the end of the day, I'm a storyteller. Sometimes I get paid to tell stories that are real when I'm acting, and other times I get paid to share stories or to create them as a content creator. But one thing that I could say is at the end of the day is that I'm human, right? And that since I'm very young, I've always felt this urge to stand up for what's right. And so to really see the opportunity to take my activism roots and really be able to now put them to use in a bigger way to help make an impact has been great. And you're seeing so many in Hollywood do the same. Salma Hayek has been very vocal about helping us find Vanessa Guillon. We just, unfortunately, in LA right now, what we're dealing with is the death of Andres Burdado, who a week ago today, literally, wow, I didn't even realize we're about 10 minutes away from when he was shot and killed by an LA Sheriff's Department deputy. And that's been very painful for us because he was on the job. He had no gang record. He, was a student, and he was working 2 jobs, helping his family. He had no priors, and he was on the job, as I mentioned. And unfortunately, 3 sheriffs pulled up in an unmarked car and pointed guns at him, and it didn't end up well. He ran, and unfortunately, when you run, apparently now that's permission to execute, which is just really sad. So to your point, I think what really has become very clear is for people to understand that until Black Lives Matter, what I continue to say, until Black Lives Matter here in the United States, brown lives can't matter because we don't even have a seat at the table. We have half a seat, if you will, but we're invisible. We continue to be treated like secondary citizens in a country that we helped build and also run. But the United States has to first and foremost acknowledge that this country was built on the back of slaves, right? So I love that within Hollywood, that now is also being said out loud, like you saw, I don't know if you've been watching what's going on with Disneyland, but they're asking Disneyland, and they finally today came out to commit that they are going to reimagine Splash Mountain, which, has racial undertones to it. We're seeing there's an open letter that was sent out by a variety of actors also asking that set life change for those of us that are of color. So things are happening. That change is definitely happening, and you're seeing more unity between Black and brown than ever. And that is super clear that it's essential during this revolution of change.
And bringing Hispanicize into the conversation, tell us, how will Hispanicize incorporate this activism during your virtual conference next week?
Yeah, so Hispanicize this year, NGLA Collective is doing it. As you know, it's a new ownership for Hispanicize, so it's super exciting. They're actually doing a virtual gathering. It's going to be the largest virtual gathering of Latinx, which I think is fantastic. And it's not just influencers and content creators, but also entrepreneurs, media, entertainment innovators, and there's a variety of panels. So you will have panels that are related to activism. I really loved watching that video for Sean, much like what we're doing for Andres. I love seeing, other people really standing up for our young brown kings and queens that we're losing in this fight. And it's important to teach people how to empower themselves. So we have everything from that, from moms, panel with moms also rising up, to really just empower people while they're at home. That's the biggest thing that you can do, is empower them. How do you stay motivated? How do you refuel? Because it's very hard these days with all the news that we have coming on at us and on our conveyor belt to stay positive and to actually know what to do next. So I think that's what's going to be super exciting for next week. People can go to hispanicize.com and register for free, which is super exciting. And this year, Pepsi's a sponsor, Nielsen, and Google.
Wonderful, Liza, and you're listening to the legend. Even though she's a young legend, but she's a legend nevertheless. XOXO Liza Monet Morales. I can't believe she's on the show. There's definitely a buck in the moment, no question about it. But Liza, I wanted to, and I know Christina and Zulai have some other questions for you, so I'll get out of the way in a second. But I wanted to ask you, because you got your ear to the street, you're talking to the activist class. I mean, this woman's literally talking to the families of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, one of the few Latino leaders that's really building those bridges in a very active way at this moment nationally. You're also talking to our celebrities, our Latino activists, and we're trying to balance a lot of things here, right? So I know our celebrities want to take this seriously, want to understand the issue, want to figure out their role in this whole situation. We're also, I think also as Latinos in general, I think it's safe to say we're trying to balance how we provide allyship to the African-American community, but also highlight these issues, that's how it's impacting our community. And then the third thing, and I think, your Hispanicize is going to highlight this. We highlighted this, Bomba Live. We've been highlighting this on Found Translator for some time. How do we address racism within the Latino community? And within ourselves, because it starts with us, right? So from the activists and especially the celebrity class you're talking to and advising, how are those conversations going?
So I think I love everything you say. The only thing I would humbly actually update is the fact that I don't actually think we're allies. We're partners. We are literally partners in this fight. And so Latinos have to understand that. It's super important for us to understand colorism is very real in our culture. There are sayings, there are dichos that we say, there are rules that are created by our families, which I don't even know who created these rules, that you're going to damage the blood if you are with someone that's darker skin and what have you. And it's time to really rewrite that narrative. So one of the things that I'm really excited about too is what we're doing with a new group of us. It's called Conciencia Collective, and it actually launches tomorrow. So you guys are getting a scoop. You'll see it in the morning, but essentially what's happening, what you're going to see is that there is some noise that we're going to be making within the Latin industry. And we partnered up with Me Too, and there's something that's going to go down tomorrow afternoon. So I would just say, if you haven't already, you can feel free to follow Conciencia Collective. Like I said, this is a scoop. There's a bunch of stuff that's coming. It all goes down tomorrow morning, but it's definitely going to make an impact, to your point, to really address why it's super important for us to stand together and to use our platforms. Because what I always say and what I keep sharing is that this little device here, known as a cell phone, has actually provided us more protection for people of color than those who are elected and those who are in uniform. This, combined with the power of social media, has made us all not only citizen journalists so that we can really call out the action, but it's actually helped us empower movements. That's why you're seeing statues come down. That's why you're seeing legislation get moved. That's why you're seeing Ahmaud Arbery's murderers being indicted. things are moving. And don't let anybody tell you that stop protesting in the streets. It's not working. It is working.
It's the only thing that's working.
What to do. And right. And especially when you have black and brown, again, coming together, it sends a signal because the government has worked so hard to keep us divided. And the more we stay united, it's game over. It's game over. For the longest time, they've called Latinos the sleeping giant. Well, guess what? We have woken up. You know, they keep saying, oh, it's your hit year and you're in. We've always been in, first and foremost. We've just been invisible because you all have refused to acknowledge that we're here, you know, and the contributions that we actually make and why we're important. But really what we're seeing now is enough is enough. And with black and brown really uniting, you're really going to continue to see some big movements, even in just the women that we're seeing being elected and running. I'm not sure if you've heard of this PBS documentary that's actually launching next Monday, but it's called She Might Be Next. And it actually looks at, it's a 2-part series. Stacey Abrams is one of the ones that's in there, but it looks at different women. There's a Latina out of Los Angeles that run for office and showing how this new generation, but also just inside society right now, they are ready to see majority actually, or the minority become the majority by having people that look like them in office, because they've realized we need us inside at the table where the rules are being made in order for us to actually make the impact that we want.
Absolutely. Christina, jump in this conversation. Christina was our talent director for Bomba Live. She did an incredible job, but also an activist. I know she had some questions for you.
So I guess I want to know, since you've dealt with Altísimo Live, now you have Hispanicize coming up, and we dealt with Bomba Live. I was the talent person, so I had to deal with talent right now because of COVID, just through the phone and through like webinars and just phone calls. What do you foresee? Well, what do you see as being the difference, the biggest difference with dealing with artists and different people now that we're in this era of COVID where everything has to be virtual with these two different events you've dealt with?
Right. So I would say the biggest thing is, you know, I've been in live stream since it first started. So I definitely am an expert in the field, and I've loved seeing it roll out and continue to grow. And then you see more and more platforms end up in the digital graveyard and you're like, no, but there's some ideas that actually really work and they stay. And I think that the big thing is that people now are getting used to the idea that it's okay for us to use live, use the power of comments, use the power of connection with one another, to actually not try to be the same as an offline event, but to hold space and let it be different and actually let it breathe. Be part of it, what I like to say, the hiccups, right? One of the things I felt really hard and that I was so grateful to my team with Altísimo Live was that, you know, we had performers on there that were going live that had never done it. Elvis Crespo is a perfect example of it, who was a champ through it all. We had microphones that we had to get through everybody. We had these tech rehearsals we had to go through. And the internet is still going to be the internet. You could have everything perfect, but the internet that day could be, I don't know, there's a rainstorm and it decides in your house it doesn't want to work. You're like, oh my God. But we're like, you know what? That's part of the excitement. Like, as if you were at a real live concert, you want to be able to kind of go with those flows, as opposed to having it prepackaged, where we've seen some of these other concerts out there where things have sometimes been prepackaged. It's turned off the audience because they feel like, I'm already at home, para eso me voy a poner a ver a Netflix if I'm not actually engaging. But to see Elvis, you know, shaking and having a good time, and then talking to Enrique, and we're putting comments in, or we did a meet and greet, you know, with Luis Fonsi, with the fan who was freaking out. And then you saw people like, oh my God, this is actually happening. Right. That's the fun part, because that's where you capture the essence as if you were at an event in real life, right? So I think what's great is we're continuing now to see a lot of these platforms adding new features, right? Even with Zoom, like adding now, before you needed a green screen to have a background. Now they're like, just kidding, you can have a background. So that tells us that there's so many things that they can do, but they chose not to do. Yeah. But it's funny how all of a sudden COVID happened and all these features, you know, Facebook now wants to be Zoom, and now they have rooms, and now, you know, it's like all these different platforms are adding all these new things, which before, when you had asked them even 6 months ago, they're like, yeah, that's on the timeline. I don't know if that's possible. So if anything, what I think is exciting is that the great pause, as I like to call it, is really advancing us to this next chapter of what it's going to be like. And so I always say, listen, DC during Corona, really take that time to figure out what's that one skill or two skills that you can improve on. So AC, after Corona, when you come out of this, right, you're coming out better, because it should not be what you were like BC before Corona, because we're never going back to that. It is a changed world. I'm going to need you to let that go. So if you really want to hold on to that, sucker, we're going to run you over. Life is just going to come and like, beep, beep, like, we don't got time for you. So what are you doing to advance? And us seeing the technology advance really is an amazing opportunity. I mean, I've seen it, and I was talking to Ray about this, just even with music clearance, it's the Wild West. It's continued to be the Wild West, and it's gone even faster just because so many people are doing so many things online, but it's forcing change to happen, much like the protests and everybody, you know, keeping their foot on the gas is forcing change to happen. So if anything, even though we're paused, we're actually moving very quickly, if you think about it, towards change and towards a new era. So that's where we have to really have that balance and make sure that we make time to have self-care, because it also gets very addicting to just be on all day long, to now be like, well, I wasn't watching TV, but I was live and I was connecting, and now I'm being the activist, and now oh my God, what am I doing? Right? So you also want to make sure that you're making time to just like zen out.
Yes. So do you find it was easier to get these artists now during this virtual time? Was it easier to say, hey, we're doing the show, we're putting it together, are you interested? Or was it more difficult because it's virtual? Did you have more buy-in because what we're going through gives people kind of like a bigger space for them now to say, okay, once I am on the show, I still can remain relevant because it's virtual? Or were there folks that just because it was virtual were kind of just put off by it?
You know, I think we were really blessed because with Altísimo Live in particular, that was for the farm workers. So when you have an event, and I'd love to hear what your experience was with you were booking talent, we actually were turning people away because, you know, we connected. We were on a historic 10 hours, 2 minutes and 40 seconds. I will never forget that time. And we connected people across 7 different countries and 8 different time zones. And literally on all day, basically, right? So while we were having all this programming, though, we also had to keep in mind where people were, where they were sleeping. We had some hiccups. It wasn't perfect, right? But for the most part, I would say we were about 90%, and we landed the plane. So that was what I was happy. So in doing that, people were a little bit apprehensive of the live element, but once they came in, they did their demo, they're like, okay, I think it's good. So I would say maybe we had 3 that said no, but it was due to like personal things that they had going on. So they actually, one of them ended up sending a video, which we played. But other than that, everyone really embraced the idea, even though it was different. Like I said, we were the first out of the gate, but more importantly, it was the cause, right? So everyone really wanted to show up for the farm workers when we really identified the fact that no one's been there for the farm workers. We have the person that currently lives at a bunker on Pennsylvania Avenue, you know, trying to even lower the amount of money that farm workers are making. That actually in and of itself was so frustrating. And it's like, listen, every time you pick up a fresh vegetable, every time you pick up a fresh fruit, guess what? One of our people picked it for you. We can at least show up for them on Cinco de Mayo, and let's really take back that holiday and really show that we can all put our flags down and instead give it meaning. Because as you know, Christina, Cinco de Mayo here, it's like the Latin version of, St. Patrick's Day. For us, as a Mexican, I can tell you that's not our real Independence Day. So to really give it a meaning and really see Colombians, Puerto Ricans, you know, Guatemalans, Salvadorian, everybody coming together was something special. So I think cause driven is really what's going to make a difference. But what was and then I would think for you all, it was similar because everybody loves the island, right? And has
They do. And I think that's what made it so touching and moving for me, being the talent person and kind of reaching out to people and wondering, will they say yes? Will they say no? What will turn them off? But I think the biggest buy-in for all of our artists and everyone that participated and paying homage to Puerto Rico. So many people were so excited to say, oh yes, you know, I'm Puerto Rican. Bien, yo quiero poner mi flag entera, and you know, I want to be on the screen and support being Latino. A lot of the people who kind of, just like you, we were turning people away at the end. Like people were sending us emails and inboxes and just even on
Instagram. You feel bad. You're like,
we did. We felt horrible. At first, we were like, okay, are we going to be able to do this? And then at the end, we were like, okay, now we got to start turning people away because people were just so moved by, just like you said, there's a cause behind it. And because we were paying homage to Puerto Rico and just giving our island so much love, you know, our comedian, you know, Eli Castro, he was like, you know, this isn't a you thing or a me thing. This is a juntos thing. We're doing this together. I'll do anything to support being Puerto Rican. So that was my experience. And I was just interested in yours because that's exactly what we felt as well. So people
it's really been beautiful
to show their pride in.
Yeah, and it's beautiful though to see that the community cares to show up, right? And then same thing for everybody that we had watching across all our platforms on Telemundo, on People in Español, on iHeart. I mean, we had such great partners, LiveX Live. It's been great to even hear people. I was wearing the shirt out the other day, and I had like 2 people come up to me when I was buying groceries. Actually, they're like, "Is that Altísimo Live?" I was like, "Yes." They're like, "Oh my God, we totally watched it. We love Los Tigres del Norte. And I'm like, the fact that you watched my event, oh my God. I'm like, I need a picture with you. Like, it just was so cool because they're like, yeah, it was such a cool way to spend Cinco de Mayo. We had micheladas and like, we had a good time. And I'm like, wow, that's great. And to also hear from the artists themselves, what a great time. We had several of them, Juanes being one of them, J Balvin, who stayed backstage to watch other people perform that were coming up after that, Andy Garcia. And I just thought this is really cool to see that like they're done, but they actually want to stay backstage to kind of see, well, what's next? What am I going to miss? Right. So that's that sense of community that you really appreciate and you want to keep building on.
Yes, definitely.
Liza, so then speaking on, speaking of our community showing up, and then also going back a little bit to the political landscape and women in politics, if you could tell us how it's been for you out in your area, I'll tell you briefly. We had our first Latina female woman run for the Senate, Janet Diaz, and this was the primaries, but she won. And, I feel that she worked really hard, and Janet is one of these people where, like, she's quiet, she's there to help, she's just, she just shows up. And when she won, so many people were surprised because she had minimal donations. People thought that she didn't have the support of the community, but she was out there knocking on doors. But other people outside of the community slept on Janet Diaz. How do you feel about this happening in California?
Yeah, so I think it's so great. I want to give a big shout out to Janet. Again, I want you all to watch this documentary. It kicks off on Monday. I'm super excited. I'm going to be promoting it. I'm so pumped. It's called, She Could Be Next. It's on PBS because it addresses this very thing, right? The fact that we have more women of color running for office. I'll share a personal story. I personally actually ran for city council a few years back in Beverly Hills where I live. And I did not win a seat, barely, but I also didn't come in last. I was the first renter ever in Beverly Hills to run, which I thought was interesting. I was the only woman of color that was Latina, I should say, traditional at that point running. And I ended up coming in. So there was 2 seats available and I came in third. So like I just missed it. But I will tell you, I was so proud because there was about 4 people behind me, which is great, who spent so much money, who were, buying people off. I don't know, like whatever they were doing. I'm not trying to accuse anybody, but, they were really making sure that they had these big tea breakfasts and lunches at their beautiful mansions in Beverly Hills. And all I knew how to do was knock on doors, put on my sneakers, lace up, and then do like good old fashioned, I want to come meet you and here's why I want to run. And as a renter, here are the things that I feel in our community aren't being seen. And that's what I think Janet did. And I think that that's what women know how to do is we can identify a problem and get to work. And especially when you're a woman of color, you can roll up your sleeves. Yes, we know how to roll up our sleeves and look good. We'll throw on a red lip, holla, and some hoops. There we go. But then we're good. Then we're good. Put us to work. We're not going to be, ay, pero yo estoy tan frufu y que me voy a poner que no, that I don't know if I could get to work or this is below me or I can't have tacos because, oh, that might stain my shirt. Like, we ain't got time for that, right? Like, we didn't got, so yes, that's it. There it is. And she could be next. Yes, it's the best. Like, I'm so excited about this. And so I think to Janet's point, that's what's so cool is to know that she really rolled up her sleeves and she got to work. And one of the women that is in the documentary is based out of California as well. And what excites me about that is a couple of things. We saw the way that the Gen Z just trolled Trump and his rally by using TikTok. Again, they use social media in a genius way to make sure that they, registered for these seats. Were they 100% responsible? No. People, of course, were worried about COVID and other things, but they made themselves heard, right? Another big thing that I know that is going on TikTok right now is for so many of them committing to turning off access on the cable for their parents and grandparents to Fox News. I'm like, oh my gosh, stop. So here's the thing is that so many people say that, as millennials or as Gen Z, like, oh, y'all just know how to use technology and you're lazy and you don't know how to do anything. Well, boo-boo, we're going to show you what we can do. Because when you're raised on watching films like Hunger Games and on Harry Potter and you're learning how to fight for the world and fight for your rights and not to be invisible, what else did you expect? That when we actually see things that actually aren't right, we're going to step in and we're actually going to do something about it. So to your point, it's very empowering because it gives me hope for what's to come. But it also shows me the work that we have to continue to roll up and do, because they slept on her. Why did they sleep on her? Because she was a woman, because she was a woman of color, and because she didn't come from a certain zip code, right? So then how do we show them that when we still can come together, because we now have become the minority majority in mostly all the United States, and we will be population-wise the majority in another 2 years, right? So being that our numbers outnumber the traditional Anglo-American, we really need to start uniting, right? And one of the sad things, unfortunately, is that they use fear in our community, and pena is such a real thing. And because documentation status is, whether you're undocumented or documented, is such a big thing in this country, and this current administration has used it to politicize fear, it actually keeps people from even wanting to get involved or have their voice heard. And so another thing right now we're seeing is the census. We're in the middle of the census. If you are watching this and you haven't filled out your census, please. It's 7 questions. It'll take you less than 10 minutes, and it's super important for you to know none of the questions on there will ask you about your citizenship status. None of the information that you gave will be shared with anyone, including your landlord. But if you don't let us know, everyone that lives there, including the little love bug under 1 year old, your community is at risk of not getting the full money that they need for free school programs, school meals, for highways, but even, in hospitals, but also even for businesses to come and make their locations, right? Businesses use census data to decide, oh, here's where I'm going to put a Starbucks, or here's where I'm going to put a Target, or critical businesses like here's where I'm going to put a bank. There's so many areas in our country that we don't have banks there because census data shows that there isn't a need. And that's why you call them a bank desert. And it's unfortunate that someone has to drive 20 miles. And it typically is an African-American or a Latino community that they have to then drive a really long time to get just a basic checking account or a savings account, which guess what happens? People just don't do it, which then makes them financially illiterate and disables their power. So there's a lot of things that the census data is used for, including what languages pamphlets will come out for voter materials in your particular community that people don't necessarily think of. Puerto Rico being a perfect example. FEMA uses the census data to determine what their impact is in terms of response, where they're going to go, how much money can be allocated. And to this day, unfortunately, with Hurricane Maria, I was just talking about this yesterday, we still don't know. I'm working with a project with Voto Latino to encourage people also with the census. And we were talking about Hurricane Maria. We still don't know the full impact because we still don't have a full count of everyone on the island. So we need our people to show up. Si nos podemos poner que, hey, you have to do it, but we can't hold someone accountable if we're not doing our part to be accountable. We have to get counted. So please, 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 if you haven't already, make sure you can go to my2020census.gov, or you can also go to somosmas.org. They have a bunch of information in there helping Latinos in particular answer the 7 questions in case they, have any confusion to get it done. But that's also something super important.
Liza,
Shout out.
with you on Instagram. I really hope we stay in touch.
No question about it. If you could just give us a moment, Liza, because we do want to give you an opportunity to share with us so everyone can know they got to check out Hispanicize next Wednesday, July 1st. We're going to play a very short clip of a great friend. Talk about supporting each other. One of the great performers that was on Bomba Live a few weeks ago, Pablo Batista. He is, amongst other things, he not only has his own Latin jazz ensemble, but he's Alicia Keys' percussionist when she tours all over the world. He's got a virtual concert tomorrow, which you can check out on his Facebook page in the Levitt Pavilion Steel Stacks Facebook page, along with special guest and other legendary musician, Nestor Torres. We're going to get a quick clip of his new song, Watermelon Man, and come back with our final thoughts with Liza Monet Morales. Back with XOXO Liza. And if you want to keep hearing that smoking music, no, Pablo, you got to have him in some of your programs. We'll definitely connect you. He's fantastic. And he's toured with artists all over the world. And You can check him out on his Facebook page, Paulo Batista on the social media, or the Levitt Pavilion Stacks, their virtual concert tomorrow on Facebook. Zula, I know you're really inspired by Liza Morales' appearance. Any final thoughts for Liza as we go around the horn here to wrap this up?
No, I'm just really excited to hear her speak. So I will definitely be looking out for somosmas.org and his size coming up next week. And thank you so much for the work that you do.
Oh, thank you. I would definitely say if you're watching at home, feel free to follow me at XOXO Liza with 2 Z's, please, on all things social. Specifically, if you're following me on Hispanicides and you want to be part, or if you are following me on Instagram, I should say, and you want to be part of the solution, then please tune in, because what I've been doing now for a month and a half daily is giving what I call homework for change. So I've become the founder of that because I started realizing that people wanted actions that they could take. And I realized that as everybody's going about their day, it's very hard to want to get involved, but then not know who to call or what to say. So similar to what they've done for Sean, I just make very easy steps every single day. Like, okay, swipe up, again, using the power of social media. Swipe up, it's going to take you straight to the petition. You can sign it for Andres. Swipe up, it's going to take you to the official fundraiser for, Elijah McClain, let's say, which was started by his mom. That's another case that really.
We haven't even gotten to that. I mean, that's all. I didn't know about that till today. That is an outrage.
Yes, that one really, really gutted my soul. And so what I've done as we've been going through, and we're seeing so many of our citizens and just people that live in the United States that have been out there protesting get hurt, I really have made it a point and a priority to show up and find them so that I can find their families and figure out what is the specific way that we can show support. What is the official GoFundMe? Because a lot of people also take advantage of other people's pain and create some fake accounts. So I really have taken the time to verify, to reach out to the families so that we're there, including the young man who lost his eyes, who is Caucasian. He's 17 years old, and he was attacked by police during a protest and was tear gas. And it not only sliced his eye, they had to remove it completely. And his reaction.
By the way, that was Dale Murphy's son, a former Major League Baseball player. But anyway, that was.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things, right? And you just start seeing his spirit of like, if this is what happened to me, it's still nowhere near what Black America has gone through. Yeah. And at least I know I stood on the right side of history. And that kind of attitude is like, wow. So I really made it a point that, we're showing up for these families. And so it's simple actions that you can take daily and I'll break it down. Like this one will take 3 minutes. This one will take 2 minutes. This one's 30 seconds that you can do, and that you're really showing up to actually save someone or help someone or support. We did it also for Ruben Gutierrez out in Texas last week. A big focus was on that. I don't know if you heard about his story, but he unfortunately was going to be the first person to be executed in Texas since the quarantine started, and is Latino. He's been on death row, and DNA that could absolve him of the charges, the state was refusing to test. And so our whole team, my whole community, I was like, we got to call, we got to save him. We have to demand a stay of execution. And we got that call 20 minutes before he was executed. And now we're focused on getting that DNA tested. So, when they tell you that social media, again, doesn't work, you can use it for good, and you can use it to make an impact. So by all means, I encourage you to follow along the journey at XOXO Liza with TZs, please. Get your daily homework and know that, even if you can only do one homework for change assignment today, maybe tomorrow you can do 2. The whole point is not to judge your bandwidth, not to judge the fact that other people's homework assignments might be different than yours, but just to do something every single day. We're in a revolution. This is your time to show what you would have done if the Nazis were coming for people at your door, if you were in the middle of the civil revolution back in the day. So this is our time to show up and step up and stay united.
No question, Christina. I know you're always excited about the post football live, our next steps. I know you're even more excited now with your new mentor, Liza.
Well, she's awesome. I'm definitely going to follow you on all different social media platforms because I think you're amazing and the work that you're doing is phenomenal. The only thing I have to say is, when are we all working together?
I like that. I like that. Speak it into existence, my friend.
Right. My favorite line all the time is "Juntos podemos conquistar el mundo." Absolutely. So I think working together would be amazing, and I would love to look forward to working with you.
Absolutely.
Yes. We'll have to definitely explore some ways to do that. And then remember, tomorrow morning, les dijo un pajarito. It wasn't me, but you'll see something and drop. You're gonna be like, oh, that's what she was talking about.
Eliza, we really appreciate your time. My last question before we're going to bring Paul on to again formally thank both of you. So I got two. First of all, tell us everything about Hispanicize so everybody knows about it. They register. You're gonna have Fat Joe Residente. You got all our favorites on there next week. So I know we're all gonna be watching. But also, this is my wife's question. Point of personal privilege. My wife gets a question, and we know you've worked with him in the past. Talk to us. She wants to know about Nicky Jam. Is he as sweet and lovely as he looks on?
He is.
Okay, talk to my wife right now. She's all ears. Talk to us about Nicky Jam, and then tell us about Hispanicize.
Nikki, man, I just have to tell you, Nikki is so humble, so patient, even through tech hiccups. And really, he's a real one. He really cares about his community and he cares about doing things right. And if you watched his new show on Netflix, El Ganador, you really get it. You have to watch it. Oh my God, we have to watch it. You really get a sneak peek, right, into what his life is like. And one thing in particular, and that what you'll see again about this thing that is dropping tomorrow, one thing that we really wanted to make space is that when people talk about Black and brown, they forget a very, very, very big important sector, which is our Afro-Latino community that is both Black and brown, right? Yes. And to be real, we all have African in us. I think a lot of people forget that when the ships came over from Africa, the slave ships, it wasn't a direct stop. It wasn't a plane and they just dropped everybody here on a new land called America. It actually stopped along every Latin country, also in the Caribbean, also in Latin America, also, in Central America. And that's important to remember. So in doing that, what I love about El Ganador is that it does show it. The diversity of the casting is amazing. You really see Afro-Latino, you see Latino, Latino, Puerto Rican, New Yorican, like you just see it all. And I'm like, yo, that's what's up. And Nikki just represents that. And I appreciate that. And you see that in watching the show too. He's owned his past. He owns that he did not make the best choices at all times. He's owned how he's played.
He's lucky to be alive, that guy.
Yeah. And how he played, right? But here's the thing is when you own your mistakes and you own who you are. I mean, he even was talking about his weight. You yourself then can go no lower because you know where that is. And then you only have one way to go but up. And he's worked so hard to do that and has been so strategic. And I appreciate the fact that he's done it in a way where he has still stayed true to who he was and is, I should say, and also been transparent that I'm not always going to get this right, but let's go on this journey. Let's be in it together. And then let me do risks. He's collaborating. He's looking for new ways to get out there. He went through a lot of heartbreak, obviously, with his marriage, but he now is in a beautiful relationship. I think we all wish we could be in that relationship. But it's so great to see.
I'd like to have the boat. The yacht would be nice. I'm fine with my relationship. I could, the yacht could just add to that love.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that's so beautiful. So yeah, no, Nikki is such a dream.
Yeah, no, and tell us Hispanicize. Let people know where they can find it and register for next week.
Yeah, so you make sure to head over to Hispanicize.com. You can register for free. It's going to be on Wednesday, July 1st from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific, noon to 4 Eastern. And it's going to be a day of impact. Bring your favorite drink, get that mojito, and also bring a notebook and a pen. Get ready to take some notes and have some fun and dance. You know what I'm saying? Awesome. It's just going to come with everything. So there you go.
No, it's definitely a must watch, and you got a great cast, and you're going to have a very strong representation of Afro-Latinas, in particular, Dasha Polanco and some other great guests. I want to, we brought Paul Sangillo, who was the guest of the first half of the show. Very quickly, Paul, we're going to get your final thoughts. Vanessa Guillen, we got to also keep in mind that issue, a woman that's in the military that's disappeared from Fort Hood. Mm-hmm. Incredible story. Nobody knows what's going on. There's a lot of rumors, apparently, so we got to stand by her family, the Guillen family, to find justice and find her. In New York, respect AOC for winning her re-election. We're gonna have a new Puerto Rican in Congress as well, Richie Torres, the first openly gay Afro-Latino in U.S. Congress, congressional history, a young rising star, Boricua, young guy from the Bronx, a great friend of the show who we endorsed on the show last week. Jessica Gonzalez Rojas won her race, so she'll be in the New York State Assembly. And Hilda Rosario Escher, who we endorsed, didn't win, but there's some real shaky stuff that happened there, Paul. We'll talk about the legal stuff offline, but basically in the main Latino polling place in Rochester, New York, when the viejitos went to go vote, her name wasn't in the ballot.
Yeah,
she was one of the three candidates, and mysteriously there was only two on there. Yep. And they moved it, and there was all this drama. So Hilda, Doña Hilda, we're still with you, and we're going to keep fighting for you in upstate New York. So just wanted to provide those quick political updates. Paul, I know you just love this energy of Liza and these strong poderosas that I bring to the table, brother. Any final thoughts, and we'll let y'all enjoy the rest of your evening.
I just want to say I'm blown away by the guests, by the energy on this program, what you bring to the people. Fantastic, fantastic. I'm so happy to have been
Appreciate you, brother.
God bless.
And when you get out to the West Coast to promote the Golden Prison, brother, you got to connect with Liza.
Yeah,
You know, and you know that we got to keep we love collaboration here. Liza, you get the final word, my friend. We're honored and blessed to have you on the show, and I know my colleagues here are very excited to have met you and keep working with you.
Without question.
Yes. First and foremost, I would say thank you again for having me on the show. I do love and appreciate that you held space for Vanessa. As you know, the U.S. Army actually did finally come forward to say that they now suspect foul play. It didn't take a genius, nor did it take months to figure that out. We knew that a while ago.
Yeah.
So again, the only reason that we're seeing change is because the pressure is there. So mi gente,
The only reason.
one thing I know about our community, we know how to show up for pressure. We know how to show up to the carne asada. We have to show up to each one of these events like it's literally going to be a carne asada. Yes, let's get the people that are responsible. We have to hold them accountable because people continue to think that they can hide behind a badge. And Paul, I know you know this, and think they can hide behind a badge and use that as a license to kill. What's very sad today, it's Sean King, who's one of the biggest activists out there, really helping lead the movement with Black Lives Matter. We discovered that there is a secret police Facebook group. I want to repeat that, a police Facebook group where they actually have been plotting on ways to kill him or hurt him. And we've been getting screenshots of those. The FBI has originally or officially launched an investigation into it. And that is just really shocking because, you know, we all know what happened to Martin Luther King. We all know what's happened to other people, Malcolm X, that have been very vocal about their plight about what it is that they're fighting for. So he took the right angle in just not staying private about it. He, again, went to social media using the best tool we have and said, here are the comments. Let me know what you know about the people. The FBI is involved, but in case anything happens to me, you all know where this is coming from. So no one can say, I don't know where it is. So I would encourage each of you, if you see something like New York says, if you see something, say something. But more importantly, these days, if you see something, record it. Record it. Do not let them threaten you. Do not let them say that it is against the law or you can't do it. Paul, again, you can speak on that because officers will lie in order to get you to do what they want. Know your rights. If you don't know them, I'm actually doing a seminar teaching people their rights because it's super important to know them.
Very important.
Sometimes just knowing them helps get police off of your back when they're racially profiling you. So just continue to empower each other and show up for each other. Because as I said earlier, we have to stay laced up because the marathon continues. We got a revolution.
I like that.
Good way
What
to put it.
I want to end this episode of the simulcast, the Found Translation Bomba Live. Liza, you're the best. We're going to continue to support you and see about what's going on tomorrow. That sounds very exciting. Paul, you're the best as well. Great friend, and I'm glad you were able to hang out in the green room. The green room is where it's at. There's no question about it. And of course, my regular co-hosts and contributors, Christina and Zulai, thank you so much for being a part of this episode. Again, continue to support Found Translation and Bomba Live and support our great panelists. Nos vemos. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye.